John. Okay. As you can see, we really getting to it. We have 2 more books each to go through. Next up, Dr. Walker.
All right, man. I gotta go with MLK. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? I feel like this gets at the heart of the continued Black struggle. I feel like this is a more, even though it's 60 years ago, it really gives a very modern look into like what is the challenges. And even my experience, you know, I wanted to bring in the miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. In many ways, this is similar to me, because for me as a Black man with a PhD, coming, you know, in first gen background, my parents didn't go to college, and now me and all my brothers have advanced degrees. It's like, what is my role in society? And I think for administrators within education, they should constantly be reevaluating and critiquing themselves, being reflective of like, what are you doing? Are you becoming a part of the system? Is that wrong to become a part of the system? What does it mean to be part of the system? And I'm not trying to say we should have a clear answer, but I do think it's important that we're constantly asking ourselves those questions, because I guess, what is our responsibility to the collective upliftment? And what does that mean? I think that gets back at the first book Dr. Johnson brought up around white architects of Black education. It's like, you know, where are we actually going? What is our goal collectively? What are we trying to do here as a community, as Black Americans, but then also as Black Americans who are American, right? Gets at the challenge of Du Bois had with the double consciousness. So I find this book hella relevant, especially right now with Trump. And yeah.
Very dope. Thank you, brother. Langston, what you have for us, fam?
Brother Johnson, I have to apologize because Brother Marcus told me that you was going to do the white architects of Black education. So I had to come through with my boy, Booker T. Washington.
Thanks, Mark.
Booker!
How did you know that I was going to do that, Mark, anyway?
I know a little something about all 3 of y'all, man.
Shut up, man.
So, this is Booker T. Washington, The Making of a Black Leader, 1856 to 1901 by Lewis Harlan. And I haven't finished reading this book, but what this book has done for me so far is man, Booker was sharp. Yes. Man, and the way that he operated, and the way that he moved, the way that he navigated Black spaces and white spaces, in a lot of ways was amazing. And the things that he said and he did, we could look back at and we could critique and call him all types of coons and sellouts and things like that. But the truth is, the progress that was made in Black education may not have been what it was if not for Booker T. Washington. The money that institutions got, the businesses that got developed. Like I think about Greensboro, North Carolina, where North Carolina A&T is, Aggie Pride. And I had a mentor of mine tell me that there would be no Black middle class in Greensboro if not for A&T. And then you think about like cities like Raleigh and Durham, like if not for Shaw University, if not for North Carolina Central, would there be Black middle classes in those cities? And would there be a Black middle class in Atlanta, right? If there was an HBCU in Harlem, right, which there, to my knowledge, isn't, right? Would Harlem be what have maintained what Atlanta is now, you know? And so I'm not a Booker T. Washington hater. I actually admire the work that he did and try to have as much empathy as I can for the situation that he was in and the things that he had to do. So I think that this is a great book.
My next book is another book that I have my people read, because especially like the kids, because they're like most of my guys are like into sports and all of that. And then there's this book about one of the best books to me about the urban ed experience as to being like a white educator in the urban ed experience and dealing with the struggles of, you know, like the kind of challenges that the kids have and being able to navigate through that and prosper through that with your own personal issues going on at the same time, is this book called The Assist by Neil Stanley. And it's It's about this really successful basketball coach and the program that he created with a whole bunch of hood kids out of Boston. These weren't kids that were going to like major D1s. These weren't like this not like the Oak Hills of the world or like, you know, like the loaded programs of the world. These is just a white dude who just loved working with a whole bunch of wild city kids and the challenges of having to call dude by his street name instead of his real name. And every time you call him by his real name, you get an attitude, you know, things like that. And, you know, like the challenges of like working through that. And the fact that the thing I like the most about it is that the coach was able to navigate these relationships, and you know, like he was able to be harsh but not offensive, and he was able to argue with the guys and get the guys to go where they need to go and do what they needed to do, and then, you know, at the same time, you know, be successful and get them to look outside of like their comfort zone and look at like the possibilities of all the things that, you know, like they could do. And that's why that book is big.
And all right, last book selection for each person. If you don't know by now, it's been a lot of game being thrown out here, man. I appreciate it. Don't take it for granted. We're gonna start off with Dr. Walker. What do you have, Dr. Walker? Last book, family.
So if we really gonna get at the heart of which Black people are seemingly experiencing the most oppression right now, I would say it's queer and trans Black youth. So I would say watch the Netflix series Pose. Man, it gets at all that 80s New York. It's been the most interesting thing I've seen, experienced, read, watched over the last year and a half. It has me thinking the most. So I'll say definitely check that out. And then as it relates to Black girls and Black boys, I'm gonna say two different books. Push Out by Monique Morris for Black girls. It specifically gets at the experience of Black girls getting pushed out into the carceral justice system. Once my fiance, there she goes. Once she puts out her book, I'm gonna recommend that one. But until then, we're gonna go with Monique Morris. Black girls are experiencing a lot, and sometimes, since Black men experience it so bad in this country, that sometimes it overshadows the experience of Black women and the way that the carceral system is specifically identifying and attacking them. So this book really highlights them and their experience in this world. So I think that's important. And then the book that focuses on something I'm specifically interested in, it would be The New Plantation, Billy Hawkins. And it gets at the intersection of race, athletics, and mostly higher education, and just basically saying the college system is a new plantation. And oftentimes you will see that Black boys, whether you become a collegiate athlete or not, since we're very young, we are taught and bred to be athletes and to admire that as the primary form of success in our identities. So we look for acknowledgement there. We look for all sorts of social recognition and appreciation, and oftentimes that funnels us into a certain way of thinking and experiencing the world, which limits us from the rest of the possibilities. So I think that's important. So I think that book gets at some of that, but then also gets at the more systemic issue of how, again, the body is up for sale, man. You got these young, talented Black men who are worth millions of dollars at 18, 19, 20 years old, if they had the ability to choose what they wanted to do in an open free market. You know, many of them worth millions of dollars, their skill, what they could produce, and ultimately they're not allowed to do it for 3 years. So that's 3 years of millions of dollars for some, hundreds of thousands of dollars for other, being given to institutions of higher education. And we all work at these spaces, right? And that's why it's important to go back to the original book so you understand the foundation, so nothing becomes a surprise. You already have the framework to understand why things are the way they are,
My man, all right.
Boom.
Dr. Clark, okay. Dr. Clark, what do you have for us?
Since Devin got a bonus, I want a bonus too.
Take a bonus, man. It's your world. Take a bonus.
And last but certainly not least, I want to give a shout out to Mary Mcleod Bethune, and this is like a collection of essays and documents about her. And the title is called Mary Mcleod Bethune, Building a Better World, Essays and Selected Documents, edited by Audrey Thomas McCluskey and Elaine Smith. And I came across this book, or got inspired to read this book via a conversation with a mentor of mine at the University of Texas at San Antonio, former colleague of mine at UTSA, Dr. Theodora Berry. And she goes hard for Black women in education. And so even always like having the opportunity to push and think about Black leaders and Black influencers who aren't men, because oftentimes it is true that sisters get overshadowed. And so this book shed a lot of light on her personal life and the way that she was able to strategically navigate some hard social and political conditions that Black people were going through, but was an advisor to presidents, was able to start her own school, Bethune-Cookman University, which is named after her. Is something that is special and doesn't necessarily get highlighted. And I think oftentimes in the Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois narrative, like they're the only two people that get highlighted as, educational leaders and philosophers in their time. But I have to give kudos to Mary Mcleod Bethune because of what she was able to do in terms of influence and policy, and actually having the ability to start her own university in the Deep South. So got to give her a plug. Another book, because I am a physical educator and I go hard for high quality physical education, not rolling the ball out, is a book called Spark by John Ratey, which talks about the importance of physical activity and exercise in the way that our brains work and function. So I think a lot of times school administrators and teachers cut their foot off by reducing the amount of time that children have to play, and Black children in particular, right? So we talk about controlling bodies and not allowing kids to be free. Well, physical education and recess and time to be physically active that's not sports is something that I think is crucial to the academic success and brain development in particular of young children. And that's not something we can remove them from. And so we all know, like we've been in higher ed, we don't expect college students to sit down at school for 6 to 8 hours a day, right? You go to class maybe an hour, 3 hours at the most, and then you get to leave. But we ask, 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds to do that, and it doesn't make any sense. So really want to highlight Spark as a text to help us rethink how the school day should be structured and the opportunities that we're giving children to be physically active.
Dr. Johnson, go ahead and bring us home, fam.
Okay. The last book that I was going to talk about was Our Underachieving Colleges by Bach. And the reason that I want to talk about that book is because that book discusses the gap between what high schools produce and what colleges expect. Since all three of you are professors, you know better than most that even if a kid has gone through a whole bunch of AP classes and had all this other quote unquote college preparatory training, there's still a curve, there's still a gap between what that kid is capable of doing as a freshman or a sophomore versus what you're expecting them to be able to do. All colleges complain about it. There's a K through 12 has a certain expectation of what they believe that they're doing, and what they say is what they consider to be college preparatory education. But the same kid who, there's still scores, thousands of kids, or probably millions actually, that have taken AP classes and, they've taken dual credit classes and things like that, but then they'll still struggle when they first get to school because they can't adjust to the pace of the class, or they can't adjust to the speed of the class, or they can't adjust to the expectations of the class. And no matter, and the thing about it, one thing that's also like an issue is the parents' involvement in trying to control the narrative for their kids. When they go off to college, the parent doesn't have that influence anymore and doesn't have those resources to be able to reach out and like complain to a professor and all of that kind of stuff like that. And it talks about, like what colleges really believe the kids are capable of doing when they get to the school versus what the high schools are selling. Like, you'll see a school that says that we provide like a high quality college preparatory education, or we provide all these resources for AP or dual credit, and then you come to find out that none of that stuff is relevant when they first walk into the doors of the college, and all of a sudden the kids are having and one of my best experiences with that was when I was a dean student at a college at a high school, and I remember we had a bunch of kids. Our school was trying to steer AP towards the white kids and dual credit towards the minority kids. And then I told my administrative team, I said, that's a mistake. You need to either blend it or you need to make dual credit available for the white kids. And then they kept saying, no, we need to make it all AP. And I said, okay. But they didn't, and then that became, and now they've made that adjustment, but it just highlights, like those particular kind of challenges and those realities and stuff like that.